Welcome to the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers Symposium of Fusion Engineers. And on behalf of the UK Atomic Energy Authority, I'd like to say hello. And if you don't know who we are the UK's national lab to develop fusion energy and attempt to put fusion energy on the grid. And our aim also is to bring the fusion community together. So part of the fusion community, and I'd like to introduce here, is Gabriela Hearst. And Gabriela, if you don't know who she is, I'll reel off a couple of accolades. She is the creative designer for Chloe, and she has her own brand, Gabriela Hearst. She is a fusionista enthusiast, and she hosted COP27. This is after COP26 for the first time when we where fusion actually was actually at UNFCCC's on stage. And she had a collection based entirely on fusion, of which she is displaying today. And she made recent headlines attending the Met Ball with this amazing guitar dress, and she's also launched Atelier Jolie with Angelina Jolie.
Angelina launched it, and I am the first brand with Chloe to collaborate for Atelier Jolie. So yeah,
which is fantastic. Anyway, we talked earlier about energy and climate crisis earlier. How did you get into fusion energy?
It was I can pinpoint it exactly. It was October 2021. I read an article in the FT, but just to give a little background, I grew up in a ranch in South America, and off the grid till I was sent to study in the city with my grandmother, and that's where my mom still is. And Gabriela Hearst, I've been 2 decades in my industry, and Gabriela Hearst was really a project that started in 2015 based on long-term view and sustainability. So it's been a journey into changing materiality, from packaging to the way we make clothes, novel materials, biodegradable cardboard hangers, measuring carbon footprints, doing first things that practices that were not being applied in our industry, then trying to upload the information into a larger platform like Chloe. But it was really in that moment, in October 2021, where I was like, this is it. I just found the Holy Grail. Because at the end of the day, sustainability is an energy issue. Yeah. And it doesn't just affect my industry. It's as long as we move this world with mostly fossil fuels, we don't have a chance. Yeah. So for me, this was it. And the first, it's an intuition. Mm-hmm. And then the more I studied and I made it the subject of the show for last September of Chloe, because I could be able to study and research it and tell more people, because I realized that the only thing that I could help bring up is it's the communication bridge that fusion needs to, more people need to know about this. And we all know that good news are harder to sell than bad news these days.
That's true, that's very true. Well, going back yesterday, you visited the Joint European Tourist, JET. So JET is the precursor to ITER, based in Cadarache in the south of France. That's the reason why ITER exists as a program. How did you find JET?
It was the first time I saw a tokamak in its entire form. So that was incredible. And it's a 70s baby like me, so I like all the color choices. I thought it was in point that red was really, really good. But the experience is kind of a holy experience, the same thing I feel, because it's like I feel like I go into a temple, mm-hmm. where, and also I find it really cool that the hottest spot on our solar system is in Column. Just like a nice fact to know. And I just really feel that joy and that thrill. We are living in Armageddon days. There's no joking, there's no like, this is it. But when I am near anyone that is working in fusion, all the star builders, everyone that has find the passion, I see hope. And I think that that's what I can try and bring to the table, just more people going like, guys, there's good news. And yeah.
Well, talking about good news, Joint, as in JET last year, we released the world record results of what it achieved in terms of high power and sustained fusion for 5 seconds, and that's the limit of the machine, and what it achieved at 59 megajoules. So that was great. And what was the turning point for you to consider fusion as part of your collection then?
It was it's really how it, as I said before, how it all starts. It starts with this real intuition and then a hunger to know, and it's my whole system that wants to understand it more. And the more I learned, the more I knew them, from researching to visiting ITER and Commonwealth Fusion System and helium and understanding and having talks and reading the books and reading this paper and just talking and reading and experiencing it, I realized, yeah, this is right where I want to be.
Great, because we talked about, is that you took a risk or maybe a leap of faith, because you said, well, it's not really a risk, but because then you jumped in and said, well, it's not a risk.
We're already in a huge risk.
Exactly.
It's like the end of our species. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and how do you think how was the collection received?
I think that it was received really well. Some people didn't understand what I was talking about, but I think more people understood. And then when the Lawrence Institute happened in December, that breakthrough that happened that already brought like the knowledge of the news, and we also had an article in Vanity Fair. So I feel that the awareness that started with the show, and you have to realize these shows get reviews by the New York Times and Vogue and all this. So to have these mediums first to tell your design team we're going to study about fusion, and trust me, one day you're going to be so happy that we studied about this, and to then speak on the reviews and I actually had the experts with me. We make sure that we had the right information at right time.
Right. And how do you think, we talked about COP27, what was your feedback from COP27, and in terms of how do you think we're going to fix the climate situation?
Well, for me, it was, took it back to COP26. The reason I wanted to go to COP27 is because I went to COP26, and my friend Daniel Hum, Chef Daniel Hum, and I spoke there, and we spoke, I think, on day 2, and I was like, and the fusion talks were like day 6. I'm like, how can these two schmucks, a cook and a seamstress, be talking in day 2? There's something really wrong here. Well, the people are actually going to do something matter. So I felt that there has to be more of a push to bring this to the subject of primary importance.
Yeah. We were at the closing day at COP26. Yeah. And do you think maybe perhaps what else apart from the UNFCCC's platforms that we could do and educate people about fusion?
I think it has to do with a lot of, we live in very silo times in communication, right? Everything seems very silo. So I tried to cross-pollinate. This is what was the idea with the fashion show, to use a platform and tell in a way, in a creative way. And I love it when people are in fusion realize, or physics, they realize that we did isotopes on denim and the fuchsia color and the tokamak formation of the lights, and it's all these things that, the interpretation of the creative process of how we see through our eyes fusion. But I do think it's by a lot of putting it in different mediums and getting it more out there than in your traditional platforms that you would hear about fusion.
So what do you think? What do you think we should do when you say other mediums?
I think for example, I find there's some that have done it. Sophie has done it, but there's a lot of, for example, I mean, we're joking about this of being like the first fusion influencer, right? But there's a lot of activists that have great platform.
Yeah.
And to bring the young activists into telling the story, because they have an audience. I mean, the ones that we have to inform, it really is like the young and up and coming. So educational systems, Jane has an idea for that as well. So it has to go through education and bringing more awareness from who are the biggest, how can we call it, like holders of lighthouses, right? That can put So yes, you will need people from different sectors of the media spectrum to be ambassadors to fusion, and to have from the up-and-coming crops of communicators.
Well, you've already nominated Angelina Jolie, so thank you very much.
I think she has her playbook, but I'm here.
Absolutely. And yes, that's Jane Hotchkiss from the Energy from the Common Good who she was referring to, so over there in the corner. Anyway, what's next for G-Force? Where do you go from here? You're about to leave Chloe.
I have my hands full with a lot of projects, and very excited about what's coming up in Gabriela Hearst. We're opening a store in LA, and every single principle of our stores are, why does everything we do, we always ask this first question, why does the environment has to suffer? So we do everything in a conscious way, so our stores don't have mannequins. I invite anyone that goes to London to go to our Mayfair store to look at it. There's no window displays, there's no mannequin, but you still have the experience of being in a luxury environment. No trees were killed. The floors are from a military barrack from the north of England. London pine, it was from fallen trees, was used. And so it's the way that we do things that makes me feel really exciting. And we're opening our store in LA, that it's the evolution of our New York store, our London store in LA with those same principles. So I'm excited for that. It's in November.
Congratulations. Well, we wish you all the best, of course. Right, I'm going to throw some questions to the floor if anyone has a question or two for Gabriela. Question over here. Melanie Windridge.
Hello. You said that it's important to get more people like advocating for fusion, if you like, so influencers and things. But how would you recommend convincing people who haven't, like you, just sort of read something and thought this is amazing? Like, how do we convince these people who might be influencers and might have a platform to actually get involved in fusion?
I think if you care about the situation we're right now as a species, and some of these young activists are really aware, and they tackle very hard problems. Some of them are from the problems from the areas where most of the suffering is happening right now. And so when you come and explain a solution like this, and I talk to them, they get very, very excited about it, because it's really about what is the alternative to fossil fuel right now that has scale, that we can project ourselves into. So I think it's really believing in the youth, I would say.
You also talked about women early on, about the importance of women in fusion.
Just as we were just talking before we joined, I do believe that women need to be in every power decision making, not only in fusion, but any situation, just because how we are the lifters. I did a whole show based on the empowerment of women on Artemisia Gentileschi, and we lift is proven. I sit in the board of Save the Children. You empower women, you empower communities. We just lift always others with us. And the way we're executive and administrative beast, I really truly believe it's you want fusion to happen fast, put a lot of women in top jobs. That's it.
And I have two bosses here. Wink, wink. We've got two other questions. Lady in the green dress. Who are you? And yes.
Monica Gehrig, Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So there are a lot of people that think that fusion's never going to happen, and they think that it's crazy, and they think that we're wasting our time and wasting our energy. How do we convince people, and how do we not lose the faith of, just general humanity that this is something that's going to happen? How do we convince people that what we are doing is valuable, and that we are an intelligent group of people trying to solve a very real problem, and that this is not a waste of time?
Well, first, I agree with everything you say, and second, I think that the beautiful thing about humanity is our ingenuity and our creativity and the leaps of faith that it has happened, and I truly believe fusion is going to happen, and I am good, just for clarification, I am called crazy every day, so, just a disclaimer. But I see it because I see it in my research that I believe it's going to happen. And at the end of the day, I don't believe we're a suicidal species. I think we're going to get ourselves from this whole, there's nothing that enervates me the most when people say, let's save the planet. I'm like, the planet's going to be just fine without us. I don't understand if we got the memo that we're the #1 predator. We have basically just eliminated most of the wildlife, and there's plastic in every kingdom of our nature world. But there's something about us, that neocortex, that it really gives me true hope. And so I would just push through, because if obviously I'm not dealing with plasma physics, so don't get me wrong, but I've heard all my life no, and I have a special talent, which is I don't really hear no. So it's like, so it's really just pushing with a conviction. But what makes me also hopeful from a realistic point of view is the engagement that there's now in the private sector. That is quite recent, so I think that is, and we were speaking with Tim before, that the needs of private sector and public sector working together.
Exactly. Public-private partnerships are exceptionally important. And actually, responding to your question, the science is proven. Q is greater than 1 through inertial confinement. So it's about keeping on talking about that.
Yeah.
Magnetic confinement hasn't entirely got there in terms of Q, breaking Q equals 1, but we will.
And now you have a lot of developments in technology, from the AI to make sure that the advancements of technologies are happening. I see it. I mean, it has to happen faster, and multiple things have to happen at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, we have to believe it's already happened, from deployment aspect to commercialization. We have to truly believe that has happened in a way. Like, convince ourselves it has happened.
Yes, and it needs to happen.
It's because we don't have time. This is the thing. We don't have time. We have a minimum window of opportunity. But the one line I always say, even the folks that want one way ticket to Mars, they're going to need fusions for the rockets. So even if you want out, you're going to need fusion. So it's going to happen. So it's like, that's my line.
Let's stick to that. There was another question. See,
Yes.
from.
Hi. Hello. Thanks for sharing your experience, and so I know you support women in fusion a lot. Really highly appreciate your women in fusion group. Just one question. You say that you discover fusion and you get engaged, which is a really good experience, because we are here fusion people, so for us it's sort of natural, but someone who is not belonging to the community, how you discover fusion and you engage with it. So could you give us some tips or advice on how to make young girls in particular to discover fusion and to engage with fusion, because we need women in fusion, and how to get. The main point of getting women in fusion is to convince girls in the high school to study STEM and to join fusion. So could you give us, based on your experience, on your feelings, how we could do more in that area to really get more women?
I mean, for me, what did it, just to keep it to the facts, is like what did it was a really well-written article that inspired my curiosity. And so sometimes it's just like pointing down what are the concrete points, why is fusion important, right? Why it's scalable, it doesn't need uranium, the half-life, all the key points. Like the graphics of telling how it looks like, and just explaining this is why we need to do it in a much more, these are like the top things of why we need fusion now.
So, conclusion is the fusion community needs to make an extra effort to show.
Yes, and I think that people like me, which I'm not a scientist or a politician or not an investor, because I love it when people ask me like, are you an investor in fusion? I'm like, do you understand that type of money that you have to invest in fusion? But that has nothing except the true belief that this needs to happen. And I'm here on my own volition, and I invited myself to the party. And it's just really someone, and more people like myself, more catalysts that truly believe that this is here, and without any personal interest besides saving our asses. That's it.
There's an interesting story. You were talking about needing more women in fusion. There's this nail technician who, very good at her job. She actually came into fusion by realizing that she was very good at being very precise at putting things on nails. And that's how she fell into the industry. So it's actually looking for those transferable skills. So whatever they might be, you mean you can be a nail technician, and she's now won awards in what she does. I mean, amazing. So we'll have to have a think about other avenues where we can reach out to women. Right, is there, I think there was one more question. Yes.
Yes, hi, Kirsten from ITA. I mean, I recognize all the stuff on your blouse is wonderful. Yes,
We ask permission, huh?
That's wonderful.
This is not a copyright infraction.
But I think it's really interesting how you open up completely new audiences. I mean, sort of lines that we could never reach. I mean, audiences that we could never reach. Now, after you've done it, and I saw also the photos from your fashion show, and I recognized all the designs and the shapes and the colors and all of that. Do you have an idea what kind of impact you had with that?
I wanted to know. That's already like, I had this platform, I wanted to know, I knew it was worth telling the story. If we got 10 people to know, it was already a success, right? But it's the conversation starter, right? Where people were like, but is it like very intelligent people of the world that were asking me, is it really going to happen? But is this happening? And, like trying to tell. But one anecdote related to the show, I knew that I wanted to have the tokamak vision, and I said, I need a master of light. I need a light designer. Find me the best light person in the world. I don't know where it comes from, the theater, stadiums, just bring me the best light person in the world. Let's go research this. And they told me, Paolo Montiel is a master. You have to find him. He's from Mexico City, but he's very busy. He's very busy, which is like, again, the first thing you can tell me is like, you won't get him. And so I got his number. I gave him a cold call, and I started telling him, I want to do this show about a tokamak and fusion, and he's going to save our asses. And then in like my first 5 minutes of overexcitement, he goes, I study physics. I believe in fusion. I was like, so there's a level of serendipity too that has to happen too. That it's just like, it's
meant to be.
It's meant to be. And it's like, I'm doing the show. And it was before the pressure of the show, and I love, at one point he kicked us all out. He was like, leave. And the show, we end up having a very reduced space. And so there was, usually you do a show and it's one, and you always see it as a designer, you see your show from like a screen on the back. But this time, because it was reduced space, we had to do 2 showings. It's a nightmare. I would recommend to do this. But what it gave is the ability that for the second showing, even for a few minutes, I hide. So I actually saw the light show for the people that went. So I had the experience that I had to run out and be like, for the second time, like original, like this. But it's really I was able to see Paolo's mastery. So I was very happy. I got to experience that.
That's wonderful. I think we're running out of time. Where's the time? I think we might run out of time. But we're wishing you all the very best
so
to
much.
G-Force. And it's lovely having you here.
Thank you for having me.
And everyone put your hands together. A big clap for Gabriela Hearst.
Thank you.